this screencast, we're going to focus specifically on membership, how it works inside of Union Fusion, and as staff personnel utilizing our platform, how is it that you would pay dues for members' checks that are coming in. So we're going to walk through the whole concept of paying dues, managing the memberships, and looking at some of the background information that exists there. So the membership module is found over here on the left side navigation menu. You notice when you expand it that you see members, and that's default. It's normal in our platform that when you choose one of the items out here, one of the main modules, that it will default to an actual screen. In this case, members, because that's what's used when people access membership most of the time. This shows a list of all of the active members currently holding some sort of dues classification against their record. And it also provides details about the amount, the specific classification, and things of that nature. To pay dues for an individual, it's a fairly straightforward process. You can come here to members. You can also just simply go in and, as we have looked at before, enter in a last name. In this case, I'm a partial first name. Once I find a record, here under the Make a Payment Simple is probably the most commonly used process for managing dues. In order to pay dues, it's a relatively straightforward process. Simply check the number of months that you want. You'll notice that these months are in order: January, February, March. I'm going to go ahead and check the second month here. And one of the things I want you to see is that it automatically checks the first. And that's because you cannot pay later dues without first paying earlier dues. And so the system demands that if you're going to check February, it also assumes, or I should say it assumes, that you're going to actually be paying January and February. In this case, it shows that both are selected, $35. It's got a total in there of $70, and it defaults to check. You'll notice that there are different payment types that you can offer up here for the purpose of expediting or showing this particular transaction. We're going to keep it at check. The only thing that the staff user would do is provide some sort of check number. That's going to be on the check itself. The check date, you can just hit enter to default to today. You can also just click into the text box to render a calendar in order to choose a specific date. So if the check is actually dated 1/25/2023, you can go ahead and put that there in the check date. Under the memo, this is just like any transaction memo. You can put anything in there that you want. The idea is to simply document the transaction when it's going in. So if there's something unique or special, I would recommend putting that in the memo when you're filling this out. Most times, though, this field, the memo field, is just ignored here. Most applications won't even use an approval code, and you don't have to worry about the payment account. You're just going with the defaults. As it pertains to the batch the idea of the batch is the same as a deposit. When you make a deposit, it typically represents a collection of checks or a collection of payments that you have collected at the local, and you're going to deposit as a single deposit. Now, this is important when you're recording checks. If you begin the process of recording for a new day and you don't have a batch started for today that will represent the deposit, you would choose new batch. If, however, there's an open batch, I can go back and choose one of these other batches here. If there is still an open batch, you can choose that batch in order to insert the transaction into this batch. This particular transaction is typically grouped inside the batch with other transactions that ultimately make up a particular deposit. In fact, we're just going to go new batch here, and I'll show you the batch after creation. So to record the payment, that's all that's required. It's that simple. I'm going to go ahead and grab another. In fact, I'll just pull up another individual. I'm just going to type Berg. I'll bring up a record. I'm going to hit proceed. Okay, that one's no good. They don't have any fees associated with their record or any membership. Let me choose another one that I think is going to have some data associated with their membership. Let's see if Catherine does. And she doesn't. I'm going to try one more. We'll go back to simple. I've got Mr. Smith here. And this particular individual does not have a membership as well. Let me approach it a little bit different. In fact, I'll go to the membership, look up a name. So here's Mick Kipling. So he's a member. Now, if we go back to financial payment, if I type in that information, select him, hit proceed, now we end up with actual dues line items for payment purposes. I'm going to go ahead and pay all 3 of these. Again, I chose check last time. You can choose one of the other forms of payments. If you're going to choose an actual credit card, you do need to have the credit card in your possession. We'll go ahead and stay with the check. Put in a check number and a date. And you will notice that what the system did, what the platform did, is it took the new batch that I had created based on the last transaction, that's batch number 6, and it automatically placed this transaction as going into that batch. It's making the assumption that these 2 checks are going to be combined at a minimum and will end up in the same deposit. In any case, once I've documented that information, selected what months I want to pay for, I simply hit submit and finish. Now, if I choose submit and finish at this point, what the system will do is take me to the payment profile, showing me exactly what this payment for $105 covered. And you can see that there were 3 line items, January, February, March, membership dues payments. The total on each was this, and from those totals, this is the amount that was applied. All right. That is the process of paying dues. Again, there are a couple of different ways to actually get into the member's record to simply receive payment for the dues. One of the easiest ways, again, is just to go into membership, go to the person's profile, and click on simple payment. I'll choose one here. I'll come down, we'll put in a check number, go with the check date. Notice it's in the same batch, and there you go. So if I go to the batch now, and that's represented here under financial batches and deposits, and open up batch 6, we can see that there were 3 checks here, each for differing amounts. If I drill into the checks, and I'm going to open each one in separate tabs up here, you'll notice that each one is paying for a different amount with respect to what they're covering in the membership dues. This one did an October payment for building trade journeyman dues at $50. These are apprentice dues at $35 each. Those are 3 months, and there's 2 months for this individual. In any case, all of these payments end up in this batch. There are batch reports or deposit reports that you can generate as well for recording this information back up in QuickBooks. But you can see that our batch total is $225. The batch is also the place where, from the batch itself, from the batch profile, you can begin the process of actually allocating or generating receipts for these individuals. To do that, I would simply click on all transactions that I want to receipt out, hit print receipts, and then walk through the process of ensuring that I have selected a printer and I've got the correct starting number. In most local installations, this is not an issue. This information comes up by default to where you see the default name of your printer and the last receipt number that you left off on. When you hit print, it'll generate the PDF and the corresponding receipts, and you can send those to the printer in order to get that information completed, or that process completed for membership. Some other things you need to know about memberships themselves. So this is, again, we've been looking at a list of members. In addition to members inside of memberships, we've also got, inside of membership, we've also got memberships. So the memberships represents the background elements or chargeables that we use in the platform to charge a designated amount. Within that designated amount, the system will also split that amount across multiple income and or liability accounts. So let's drill in and look at what this might look at, for example, in the building trade journeyman. So if I drill into the current price, which is $50, you can see the actual classification rate here on this screen when it became active. So it can go active on a particular date. And the way that that $50, when it's received, is split across the internal accounts in the system. Now, this is very important, and one of the reasons why we encourage our local users to utilize this account setup is because at the end of the month, it makes it very easy to know how much is obligated to international dues and how much is obligated to local dues when the payments for these line items are being received. Our system will manage things like payment order. This doesn't normally apply. Typically, we keep the payment order 1 and 1. This allows the payment, when it is received, even in a partial capacity, to be evenly split across the 2 accounts that you see here. In any case, the membership and the related classification and its rate are all of the background information that exists out there for properly generating the line items that make up the dues invoices to the members, and then eventually receiving payment for those line items. Now, on each membership, one of the features that we have on the membership, I'll open this up, is the ability to create additional line items for each person. You'll notice that we've got number of line items to generate is set to 3 here. What this means is that for this Building Trades membership, for this particular membership, all dues classifications that sit underneath this will have 3 line items, the next sequential 3 line items that each member should be paying. So we're looking at Building Trades. If I go into my Journeyman under members, and I will look at some of these, I'm going to bring open, actually I'll just go down to the Building Trades membership. When I'm on the Building Trades and I open up these individuals, one of the things I want you to pay attention to is that each one of these members has 3 line items. Again, that's because of the automated feature in the platform that generates and always maintains 3 open invoices for membership for each person. You'll notice that when I go in for, in this case, Edith Wade, I do see these line items here. Not to worry. A lot of times we know we've got customers who want to pay more than 3 months at a time. I can easily get 3 additional months by just clicking on add another 3 times. In this case, now I go all the way up to June. If I want to pay these 6 months, I would just check the last month. By default, the system will automatically check the earlier months, because remember what we said, you can't pay June without having first paid May, April, March, etc. Once those are checked, the system totals it here. Again, you see the payment interface down here. Use an appropriate form of payment. I can put in a credit card number here. I would put in the name of the individual here. Make sure that your card expiration date is accurate based on the payment method you're receiving. Make sure that you've chosen the right billing address. One of the options you have on credit card payment is the ability to save this card for future use. You'll notice that there is no batch application. That's because this is an electronic payment that occurs by a merchant outside of the system. So all of the electronic transactions on a daily basis will actually be batched together, and you would see on a subsequent day a batch of credit card transactions coming in independently. So again, there's no need for the user to batch them in the same way that you would batch checks. These are done automatically. If I wanted to, I could hit submit and finish. I'm not going to. It's going to fail on that number here. But provided that the credit card information is accurate as you fill it in here and the rest of this information is correct, when you hit submit and finish, it will process that credit card transaction successfully. Just a couple of additional information pieces about membership itself. As with most of our modules, one of the other things that we provide out here is a settings feature or a settings menu item under membership. Now, we pride ourselves as an organization at having a lot of configuration in the system. This is really a collection of features that give you the ability as an organization to choose how to render or use our platform in a local specific manner. So there are a number of options that you see here and up here in terms of choices that you would make, and we guide our users through these choices so that the payment process occurs the way you normally would conduct a membership payment at your local. I'm not going to cover all of these configuration options, but these are variations that allow you to do this process slightly different. Or there are additional items up here where you can fill in these pieces of information in order to have people communicated with for receipting purposes, and or a number of other options. Again, as far as the configuration goes, this is part of our normal setup and conversion process. We get this configuration fine-tuned the way that you need it for your particular local. That concludes the discussion that I wanted to have here on membership. Again, fairly straightforward. If I do go back to the members grid, one of the separate things that I'll talk about is the way to filter and manage and use the data in this grid. This grid right here for most of the locals that we work with is perhaps the most commonly used because it does house information about the members. And so I want to make sure that you come away thoroughly equipped with how to query the data that sits in this grid, output or report on the data, and interact with it as needed when you are performing your work duties. This concludes this screencast. I'm going to wrap it up here with membership. Thank you so much for attending here this morning or this afternoon, whatever the case might be.